Being ignored hurts more than rejection because uncertainty quietly tortures the human brain far beyond ordinary emotional pain. Rejection gives painful closure, but being ignored traps your mind inside endless questions without clear emotional resolution. You replay conversations repeatedly wondering what changed what you said and why their energy suddenly disappeared completely. The terrifying truth is that being ignored activates the same painful brain regions as physical injury itself. Your mind begins desperately searching for answers because uncertainty psychologically feels far more dangerous than painful truth. Suddenly, every unread message feels heavier, every silence feels louder, and every memory feels strangely unfinished. Stage 1. Emotional confusion begins because the brain naturally struggles accepting emotional distance without direct explanation. First, you start blaming yourself, questioning your worth, and emotionally shrinking without realizing silence distorts reality dramatically. The hardest part arrives quietly because humans instinctively fear abandonment more than uncomfortable, painful honesty. Sometimes, so naturally, you chase answers, send messages, overthink details, and desperately search for emotional certainty everywhere. But the more emotionally desperate you become, the more power you unknowingly surrender to their silence, because attention follows scarcity, and emotionally unavailable people suddenly appear more valuable to wounded minds. Automatically, you mistake emotional absence for value when often silence simply reveals emotional immaturity, avoidance, or confusion. The dangerous cycle begins when ignored people emotionally overinvest, hoping effort somehow restores lost connection again. Stage 2. The emotional trap begins because pain quietly convinces you to abandon your dignity first. You suddenly become overly available, replying instantly, waiting constantly, and emotionally orbiting someone, losing interest completely. Ironically, chasing people rarely restores connection because desperation psychologically destroys attraction faster than distance ever could. Emotionally healthy people communicate clearly. Emotionally unavailable people often hide behind confusing, painful silence. Instead, the painful realization slowly arrives. Sometimes silence itself becomes the answer you desperately feared. Hearing most, but before pain transforms into strength, you must first understand why being ignored controls human psychology. Stage 3. The psychological shift begins because ignored people eventually stop seeking answers and start seeing reality. You slowly realize people rarely ignore someone accidentally. Repeated silence often reveals hidden emotional priorities completely. This painful truth hurts deeply because effort without reciprocity quietly destroys emotional self-respect. Over time, suddenly, you stop romanticizing confusion because emotionally healthy relationships rarely require endless, painful guessing game. Strongest realization arrives quietly. People interested in keeping you rarely make communication feel painfully complicated. Some people disappear emotionally because honesty feels uncomfortable, while avoidance feels temporarily easier for wounded minds. Their silence often reflects their emotional limitations, not necessarily your worth, value, or importance entirely. This understanding changes everything because emotional peace begins when self-worth stops depending upon inconsistent people. Stage 4. Emotional detachment begins because clarity quietly replaces obsession. Once painful illusions finally collapse completely, you stop chasing explanations because silence already communicated everything words repeatedly failed expressing honestly before. Suddenly, your nervous system relaxes because uncertainty loses power when painful reality finally becomes accepted completely. You stop refreshing messages, stop rereading conversations, and quietly begin reclaiming emotional control again. Finally, ironically, emotional distance often increases respect because unavailable energy naturally feels more psychologically valuable everywhere. The moment you emotionally detach, something surprising happens. Silence suddenly stops feeling personally devastating anymore. Some people unexpectedly return once they realize emotional access to you no longer feels guaranteed completely. Others quietly disappear forever because your emotional availability was the only thing keeping connection alive. Let them leave because forced emotional attachment usually creates exhaustion far greater than peaceful solitude. True emotional healing begins when ignored people stop begging silently for attention from emotionally unavailable minds. You finally understand protecting peace matters infinitely more than chasing people, refusing genuine emotional effort. But the greatest transformation begins only after ignored pain becomes emotional wisdom instead completely. Stage 5. The emotional rebirth begins because ignored pain eventually transforms into painful psychological wisdom. Naturally, you finally understand silence, revealed truths, emotional attachment, desperately tried protecting from painful reality before completely Some people ignored you because convenience mattered more than connection, and painful honesty confirms this quietly. Others simply lacked emotional maturity, because vulnerability terrified them more than permanently losing meaningful connection. Entirely, the hardest truth eventually arrives. People emotionally invested rarely leave someone drowning inside uncertainty. Intentionally, you stop blaming yourself, because emotionally unavailable behavior often reflects unresolved wounds hidden deeply inside. Suddenly, your attention shifts inward, because healing begins where emotional chasing finally reaches absolute exhaustion completely. You stop proving your worth, because genuine people rarely require endless painful demonstrations of loyalty. Emotional peace quietly returns when expectations disappear and self-respect becomes stronger than emotional attachment. The powerful shift happens quietly. Ignored people eventually stop seeking closure and create their own. Ironically, emotional distance often makes people notice your absence after taking your presence for granted. Some suddenly return confused, because emotional access to you no longer feels endlessly guaranteed anymore. But true healing means no longer needing apologies from people who misunderstood your emotional value. You finally realize closure never arrives through explanations. Closure begins through emotional acceptance. Instead, naturally stop chasing people. Emotionally unavailable minds often confuse genuine love with temporary, convenient emotional comfort. Protect your emotional energy, because peace becomes impossible when attention constantly follows unavailable people everywhere. Walk away proudly, because emotional strength begins exactly where painful attachment finally loses control completely. Become someone silence strengthens, not someone uncertainty emotionally destroys through endless painful overthinking anymore completely. If emotional wisdom matters more than painful confusion, subscribe, because this journey transforms broken minds. Master emotional detachment, protect your peace, and never allow silence to destroy your worth again.